Welcome back to the Escape the Clock video series, an information series where I, the author of the Escape the Clock book, walks you through how to build your program to financial freedom and early retirement. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 3. Today we're going to do a big one. We're going to look into the future, peering past the curtains to try to see how costs might be changing next year, the year after, and for many decades to come. You might be wondering how that's even possible. So today I'm wearing my magic glasses, which are actually not magic. I wear these when I have to work on the screen for a while. But anyways, we're going to use data science as our magic because we can actually use a lot about the data that you already have, the data you've already put into the planner to be able to forecast the future. Now, you have to put some more information in to be able to do that properly. We have to look at inflation, how will costs change over time? And there's a few different ways we can go through that exercise, and we will. Additionally, though, you have to look at your own life. You're going to have to close your eyes, lean back, and dream about your future. Are you going to be buying another car? Are you going to buy a home? Are you going to expand the size of your family? These are the kinds of things you need to think about. And it's okay if you don't have the answer. We can just get started because we'll constantly be able to come back, refine our plans, and get closer and closer to the target. Right, let's get started. If you remember last time we completed our expenses, we calculated an accurate cost of living for the year 2023, but we're going to forecast out. We need to know what our expenses look like in the future. Of course, we don't have all these expenses yet, so we're going to have to go through an exercise to deduce that. So that brings us to the retirement planner, where we'll start to go and do the exercise to see what might costs us look like. And as you see, it's already started that for us. Here we have our $137,846 cost of living for 2023. And that formula is pulling it directly from the sheet, the expenses sheet. So as new expenses get added, it will go in and replace them. But to do that, I need to copy down that formula from this year into the next year. And to do that, it's a simple copy and paste. I just can copy the cell, I can paste on top, and you'll see it's $0 now. And that's because it's looking for the year 2024. There are no expenses for 2024. I'm going to undo that, and we're going to estimate things out. And by default, it already is. I have the actual estimate for this year, which is 2.4%. This is the actual number. If I look at it next year, there's an estimate as well. It actually happens to be 2.2%. That's why I have this number here. That number is going to change, and every year we might see a different number, and we should, because inflation, market cuts, and things like that are going to change it. But let's assume that the inflation for this year ends up locking in at 2.4%. If my cost did not change whatsoever, I would expect to see that my $137,000 of spending will have cost me $141,000 by the end of the year. Of course, my spending has changed in all kinds of ways. You know, I might have eaten differently. My family will have acted differently. Lots of things will be different, and we can incorporate that as well. But for now, let's just go through and figure out how inflation might look over time. Once we have inflation figured out, then we can think through all those big life events, and we can model those next. To start with inflation, I already feel good with my 2.4%. I feel good with my 2.2%. But how do I do 3 to 5 to 10 years in the future? That's much harder. And it's up to you how you want to do it. You could use a flat number. Like I could just say, okay, you know what? I'm gonna be really pessimistic. I'm gonna say 3%, or maybe I'll even say 4%. What does a 4% look like every single year? I can see that, wow, that $137,000 based on my current spending habits really get pretty expensive as we go out into the future. Inflation is really adding more and more to it. So it depends on your risk tolerance and what you want to do. For me, I'm actually going to go in and I'm going to look at historical trends. And I'm going to use a statistical pattern to apply future trends based on that. Meaning, based on how inflation moved in the past, I'll go ahead and do that to extrapolate numbers for the future. And so you'll see me plugging those numbers in now. I already recalculated those by I basically just took the bunch of numbers, put it into another tab. I looked at what the averages look like, and then I ran those out really quick. That list here, so I'm just plugging them in. So it looks like it's going to go 2.2% again. So not a lot of inflation change. If you look at how the numbers sometimes don't change, inflation can sit steady at different times. Also, it goes up and it goes down. But what this field is doing is it's giving us a way to model inflation. And it doesn't just have to be inflation. It could be other things as well. If I know, for instance, that in the year 2026, that I'm expecting a large life event, I don't know exactly what the number is, but it could be, 3% higher than what I'm paying now. Oh, then I might put 5% in here for that year, and I might put a note on that about why I increased that 5%. Maybe I even bold that or highlight that in order to say, hey, pay attention to this thing. This is something I'm watching for or I'm expecting. So that's how you might go through and use this to start to kind of model how your dollar will, either inflate or deflate over time. But what about actual life events? That's a little different. So let's go ahead and do one now, because it could be anything. I could be planning on maybe decreasing my spending by $5,000 next year, or maybe I'm planning to increase it by $20,000. It's completely up to like what life event you're working towards or what reduction plans you're working towards. Look at the other videos. We talk about reduction in lots of categories. But the first thing I want to mention is not everything goes in this field. So it depends on how you're accounting for the money. So if let's just say I know that I'm planning, even with a 2.4% increase by the end of this year, I know I took some actions, and I believe I decreased my overall spending by $5,000 this year. I'll know at the end. For now, I believe it went down about $5,000. So all I would do is I'd come up here and I'd subtract my 5,000 from that estimate, and I'd make note of that. Now, notes are important. This helps me track why I did things, and I don't lose track of things. Typically, what I'll do is I'll bold it whenever I have a note on there, or I'll mark it in some way so I know. There's also this caret there. You can kind of see it. Now, that number is different than just the 2.4%. I can see how costs are changing. Now, that might have been because I just went out to eat less, or I bought more bulk food, or I canceled some subscriptions or something. But what about something more substantial? What if let's just say I'm planning to have a kid. My wife and I decided we want to actually adopt a child, and that is pretty expensive. There's adoption costs themselves, and then there's the cost of actually raising that child across 18 years. Additionally, there's the cost of paying for their college education. That's a lot. But all of these things can be incorporated in the plan that in 3 years, so by 2026, we're expecting a new baby in the family. The total ended up being very expensive, $50,000. Now, it can be paid for in many different ways. I could pay for it with a new loan. If I paid for it in a loan, I would account for it in my loan thing, and then the payments would end up for that loan would end up showing up through further years. So whatever payment I would make in 26 would show up, and then future payments would show up there. So if I know I'm paying for it in a loan, I could actually amortize the payments across, and I can use the loan section to help me model out what those payments might look like, and then I can kind of look at my costs. That's one way to do it. If I'm putting on a credit card, which in no way should I do this. Like $50,000, even if you have the limit for it, there's no way you can pay that full thing off right away. The interest will kill you, even if they let you do it. So, but that would be, credit card payments. The balance basically would go up. So basically it would be a charge. For 2026, I'd expect a $50,000 charge, and then lots of expensive payments after that. So not doing that. Instead, this is a couple years out. So, we decided the budget for it. So saving up enough money that we can finalize all the adoption costs, and, make sure that the arrival of the baby is a stress-free thing. So it is actually money that would come out of a savings account. What I'd expect here is either making a check payment in my cost. So there'd be a negative 50,000 in the cost for that year as a payment. So a plus 50 is what you'd see in the column. And then in the savings category, which we'll get to later in another video, there'd be a negative. So basically, I'm paying that 50 from savings, and so the accounting works out. So here, let's just say that's what we're going to do. So here, my costs are going to go up $50,000. All right, big jump. Now, it's going to go down. It's a one-time cost. So for a one-time cost, I have to negate it, because I'm going to take it out of my savings. So minus 50,000. So it jumps right back down after that. So you can see there's just going to be a big jump here of $50,000. I have to note why. If that number changes, I have to remember to change it in two places. But I can definitely do that because I have a note to remind me that it's a one-time cost. And then inflation on top of costs after that. So I just talked about a couple things there. One-time cost versus ongoing costs. One-time cost, you can see how I handled it. If it was a loan and therefore it has ongoing payments, I have to amortize it, which gets us into our next thing, which is the cost of raising a kid across 18 years. That can be expensive. So the numbers change, but I'm looking at a US average. It can cost around $270,000. This does not include college. This is just the cost of just raising a kid. And so I would expect, depending if that baby arrived in 2026 versus 2027, for simplicity, I'm going to say 2027, the costs are going to either apply here or here to start. I'm going to start here, and I'm going to add a portion of that $270,000 from here all the way through the next 18 years. So I expect $18,000 increase So my cost now just jumped, and they're going to continue for 18 years. So meaning I have to now go down. So you can see I'm at 2027. So by 2044, I should expect those costs to continue, but things go well after that. This baby might go to college and these costs might drop back down. So I can subtract my 18,000 back off. Now cost has dropped again. And again, I can bold it here. I can kind of make a note and so on. So what you see here is cost of a child across a period of time plus a one-time adoption cost. Children are expensive. You can see the cost there and how it affects things going forward. But there's other places you might expect when you're doing your cost modeling as well, such as when empty nesters, you'll see your cost drop. Medical changes. You might have high medical bills when you're older, or maybe less travel. So you can start to model and add and subtract numbers to your formula. Try to adjust for your different changes in your quality of life. Just remember to add notes and to mark them as you go, because you're going to want to consistently come back and revisit them. Because every year that goes by, you're going to replace that formula with the actual formula. So whatever you have here will get overwritten by what is the year before. And as you go through, real numbers start popping up. And as these real numbers start popping up, you can start to correct and adjust your estimates. What you have is kind of a shrinking target. Before, it's a blurry, wide target. You're doing your best, and it gets clearer and clearer over time. Awesome. So that's how costs really work. You might be wondering, I didn't really talk about college savings. I just said, hey, great, cost is done at that age. The reason I didn't talk about college savings is because I would account for that separately. I would actually account for that as a 529 account where I'm making contributions in. Now, those contributions are probably coming from my checking account. It maybe, or they could be coming out of my paycheck. So that just depends on the type of contribution setup that you have. Meaning your work is doing the contribution. That way, you're getting less income all of a sudden, but you're not seeing a raise in costs. If you're making an after-tax contribution, meaning that your work paycheck is the same, but money is now in your bank account, and you're taking money from your bank account and doing like an ACH or some other transfer into your 529, now you do need to model costs. So for instance, I might say, okay, I'm making a $300 a month payment to a 529 account. That would be then, I could actually do that really quick. I can say, all right, well, let's just say actually it'd be this year. Maybe the year the baby is born is the year I start saving for their college. I can say, okay, now I need to add the cost of $300 a month times 12. I'm going to do it every single month of the year. Now what I did is I increased my costs by, $300 a month. I'll add a note, $300 a month after tax to 529. And again, I need to remember to take that off at some point. I don't imagine I would continuously put money in that 529 forever, even though there's good stuff about putting money in those accounts. Any money not used now will actually roll over and be in an IRA for your dependent. But anyways, the point is I can account for it in the way that makes sense based on the type of account that I have. And that's it. That's how you model out costs. And what we're doing here is we're trying to really peer into the future. We're parting the curtains. We're trying to see, where am I going to be when I'm 50? Where am I going to be when I'm 65? How far is my spending going to get me? And what you're really trying to do though, you're trying to show that you can start to stabilize these numbers. You're always going to get some level of fluctuation, but your goal is to get them to fluctuate only like by $1,000 to $5,000 total. You're trying to get into a variance. And when you see that you're doing that successfully, especially for multiple years in a row, you can feel good that you actually understand your target cost of living and that your patterns of behaviors that you're doing are making it possible to achieve that cost of living. All right, that's costs, but really that's only half the story, because when it comes to making contributions into that 529 account, when it comes to paying off credit card balances or knowing, should I get a new loan, or how fast can I get rid of my loan or my mortgage, we need to know how much money we have to work with. And that's where income comes in. The difference between income, especially the after-tax income. So our tax situation, our after-tax income, what money is left after we pay taxes, and our costs tell us how much cash we have to work with. And remember, the goal is to maximize the delta so that we have more money to save, more money to invest. We get rid of deterrents, like we maximize by optimizing costs. And that will wrap up this video for today. So that's it. You now have costs modeled out for many years, decades into the future. Now, these may not be the accurate costs. Your spending is going to change, but every single year you go through it and you override your estimate with the reality,
you'll become more informed and you'll become better at planning the future. And before you know it, you'll start to see a lot of that variability calm down. Things will start to stabilize. You'll get more of a sense that you understand how to control the wild rapids that are costs, inflation, and fluctuations. And more importantly, that you are actually ready to enter into a period of not working and living off of passive income, living off withdrawals, because you've done the work, you've seen and worked towards that less turbulent waters. So great. Next time, we're going to go in how to do a similar exercise to be able to anticipate income in the future so that we can really be sure that we are taking the money we have left over and doing the most with it. I'll see you then.
Quick reminder, I'm a retired program manager, not a financial planner or a fiduciary. All the information presented here and in the Escape the Clock book is expected to be reviewed with a certified professional. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Support the show by visiting escapetheclock.com, where you can find the guide, the planner, and more episodes. If you need help with building or running your program, you can schedule help at the site. If you, a friend, or loved one is feeling trapped by work or money, let them know about escapetheclock.com. Remember, time is your most valuable asset. Start living life on your terms and escape the clock.